Every day in America, law enforcement officers conduct approximately 50,000 traffic stops. And every single day, drivers in those stops say things they should never have said, hand over rights they did not know they were surrendering, and walk away from encounters that could have gone very differently if they had known 4 sentences. Not 4 laws, not 4 legal concepts, 4 sentences. Here is the part that shocks most people when they first hear it. Officers are legally permitted to lie to you during a traffic stop. They can tell you they have evidence they do not have. They can claim a witness identified you when no witness exists. They can tell you that cooperating will help you when legally it changes nothing about their authority. The Supreme Court has repeatedly confirmed this is lawful, and yet, the same Supreme Court has also given every American driver specific, documented, tested legal tools that work precisely because they do not depend on what the officer says. They depend on what you say. Today, I am going to give you those tools, word for word, in the exact order you need them, before your foot ever touches the pavement. Before we get to the 4 phrases, you need to understand why even careful, legally aware people handle traffic stops badly. Because the answer is not ignorance, it is architecture. A traffic stop is a deliberately constructed environment. Every element of it, the location on the shoulder of a road, the approach of the officer, the sequence of requests, the lights still flashing in your mirrors, produces one specific psychological effect: compliance. Research on physiological stress responses shows consistently that the human body treats a traffic stop as a threat event. Your heart rate elevates before the officer reaches your window. Your ability to read carefully, think critically, and ask deliberate questions is measurably reduced by the same stress response that would help you sprint from danger. And into that moment of elevated stress, an officer extends a hand and says, "Sign here, step out. Do you mind if I take a look?" Everything about the way these requests are delivered signals that what is happening is routine, that no thought is required, that the appropriate response is to simply comply and move on. Here is what you need to understand before we go any further. That feeling of pressure is real, but your obligation to comply with it is not. The Supreme Court has confirmed in case after case that you have the right to know what you are agreeing to. You have the right to speak your rights into the record, and you have the right to exercise every constitutional protection available to you, politely, calmly, firmly, even while standing on the shoulder of a road at 10 o'clock at night with a police officer at your window. What most drivers do not have is the language to do it. That language is exactly what this video gives you. I'm Rebecca Turner. This is AmeriBrief, where we translate the legal decisions that shape your daily rights into plain language every American can understand and use. If you have ever been pulled over and walked away wondering whether you said something you should not have, subscribe to AmeriBrief right now and hit that notification bell. Because the 4 phrases I am about to give you took years to develop through real case law. We are covering them in the next 15 minutes. And by the time this video ends, you will know exactly what to say at every critical moment of a traffic stop, before anyone asks you to open that door. Everything in this video is built on real Supreme Court decisions, not opinions, not legal theories. Rulings that govern what officers can do, what prosecutors can use, and what your words on a body camera actually mean in a courtroom. Let me walk you through the 4 cases that every driver needs to know about. Case 1, Pennsylvania v. Mims, 1977. This is the ruling that established an officer can order a driver out of a lawfully stopped vehicle for officer safety reasons. The word order is critical here. Under Mims, that authority applies when an officer is giving a command, not when they are making a request. The legal difference between those 2 words is the first thing most drivers never think about. Case 2, Salinas v. Texas, 2013. This is the ruling that surprises people most. The Supreme Court held that when a person goes silent during questioning at a traffic stop, before any arrest, without explicitly invoking the Fifth Amendment, prosecutors can point to that silence in court as evidence of guilt. Read that again. Your silence, without the right words attached to it, can be used against you. Silence is not a constitutional shield. The explicit verbal invocation is. Case 3, Berghaus v. Tompkins, 2010. A suspect sat through nearly 3 hours of interrogation, mostly in silence, then made one brief statement. The Supreme Court held he had waived his rights because he never clearly invoked them. The combined rule from Salinas and Berghaus is one of the most important things any American needs to know before they are ever questioned by law enforcement. You must speak to protect your right to be silent. Case 4, Rodriguez v. United States, 2015. Once an officer has completed the tasks tied to the traffic stop, checking your license, registration, insurance, and issuing or deciding on a citation, the legal justification for your continued detention is over. Any continued questioning after that point requires independent, reasonable suspicion. Every answer you give to a friendly roadside question is potential material to establish that suspicion. These 4 rulings together tell you exactly why your words, said in the right order, at the right moment, are the most powerful legal tool you have during a traffic stop. Now let me give you those words. Before you open that door, 4 sentences need to be on the record. Not after, not during, before. Because once your foot is on the pavement, the legal environment around you changes completely. Phrase 1. Before you touch that door handle, before you reach for the latch, look at the officer and say this clearly and calmly. Officer, are you ordering me to exit the vehicle? And if so, what is the lawful basis for that order? This question does something precise and important. Under Pennsylvania v. Mims, officers have the authority to order you out for officer safety, but that authority only applies when they are giving an order, not when they are making a request. The words "can you" and "would you" are requests, not commands. When you comply with a request silently, your exit looks entirely voluntary on the body camera. Courts have repeatedly characterized voluntary exits as implied cooperation with everything that follows. When you ask this question, you force the officer to put their actual legal authority on the record, captured by their own body camera. If they are asking, you can decline. If they are ordering, you now know exactly where you stand legally, and so does every court that reviews that footage. Phrase 2. Before your hand touches that door handle, and this is the most legally critical sentence in this entire video, say this out loud, clearly and calmly. I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches of my person, my vehicle, or my belongings, and I am requesting to speak with an attorney before answering any questions. 3 sentences, approximately 15 seconds. Here is why every word of this matters. Invoking the Fifth Amendment explicitly satisfies the requirements established in Salinas v. Texas and Berghaus v. Tompkins. Your silence now has legal protection because you spoke the words that activate it. Declaring no consent to searches protects you under the Fourth Amendment. Courts examine the totality of circumstances when evaluating consent, and passive compliance has repeatedly been treated as implied consent in case after case. Your explicit declaration eliminates that argument. Requesting an attorney documents your Sixth Amendment awareness and creates a record that protects you if this stop escalates in any direction. Before we continue, drop a comment right now and tell me, did you know that staying silent without saying these words can actually be used against you in court? Yes or no? I read every single comment. Phrase 3. Before your foot touches the pavement, one more sentence. I am complying with your order under protest, and my hands will remain visible at all times. This phrase does 3 things simultaneously. First, it establishes your exit as compelled, not voluntary. Voluntariness is central to how courts evaluate everything that happens after you step out. A compelled exit, documented by your own words on the body camera, eliminates the argument that you were freely cooperating beyond the legal minimum required of you. Second, the phrase, under protest, is a legal flag that any reviewing court will recognize. It signals clearly that you were not a willing participant beyond what the law required of you. Third, announcing that your hands will remain visible eliminates any officer claim of furtive movements that could justify a pat-down. And here is one critical detail that most legal content never mentions. When you step out, close the door behind you. When you exit and leave the door open, you dramatically expand what falls under the plain view doctrine established in Horton v. California, 1990. Officers can observe your interior from new angles. A flashlight sweep from a lawful position is not a search under the law. It is plain view observation. Anything visible from that position can be seized without a warrant. Closing the door limits that exposure and forces any further observation to require a legal basis beyond plain view. Phrase 4. Once you are standing outside, once the officer has completed all the tasks tied to the traffic stop, ask this question calmly and clearly. Has the purpose of this stop been completed? Am I free to go? Under Rodriguez v. United States, asking this question on camera forces the officer to either release you or articulate a new legal basis for holding you. If they have no basis, that is now documented. Every question the officer asks after your Fifth Amendment invocation, you respond the same way. I have invoked my right to remain silent. Calm, firm, polite, no attitude, no sarcasm, no raised voice. Cooperation does not mean conversation. You can be completely respectful to an officer while exercising every constitutional protection available to you. Let me walk you through a complete traffic stop using all 4 phrases, so you can see exactly how this plays out from the moment the lights come on to the moment you drive away. Here is what the unprepared driver does. The lights come on. They pull over. The officer walks to the window. Can you step out for a second? The driver opens the door silently. The officer asks where they are headed. The driver answers. The officer asks if they had anything to drink. The driver says just 1 beer. The stop is now a DUI investigation. 3 minutes later, the officer asks if there is anything illegal in the vehicle. The driver says no. The officer says, well, then you would not mind if I took a look. The driver is now in the consent trap. The body camera recorded every word of every answer that built that case, and the driver never realized the stop had turned against them until it was too late to stop it. Here is what the prepared driver does. The lights come on. They pull over safely using the turn signal. They turn on the dome light if it is dark. They turn off the engine. They place both hands on the steering wheel where they are visible. They roll the window down 2 to 4 inches only. The officer approaches. Before the door is ever opened, the driver says clearly and calmly, "Officer, are you ordering me to exit the vehicle? And if so, what is the lawful basis for that order?" The officer confirms it is an order. The driver responds, "I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches of my person, my vehicle, or my belongings. I am requesting to speak with an attorney before answering any questions." Then, "I am complying with your order under protest, and my hands will remain visible at all times." The driver steps out, closes the door, stays quiet. The officer asks where they are headed tonight. The driver responds, "I have invoked my right to remain silent." Calm, polite, firm. When the stop appears complete, has the purpose of this stop been completed? Am I free to go? That is the difference. Not between a lawyer and a non-lawyer, between someone who knew 4 sentences and someone who did not. Before we close, 2 state-specific legal realities that can change everything about how these rules apply to you. Stop and identify states. In states including Texas, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, and several others, you are legally required to provide your name when lawfully detained. This is not a rights violation. This is state law. Refusing to identify in these states can result in a separate obstruction charge entirely independent of why you were stopped. Know whether your state has a stop and identify law. In those states, give your name. That is the one exception to the silence protocol. Marijuana as probable cause. This varies dramatically by state, and it changes how your vehicle can be searched. In Colorado and Maryland, courts have significantly limited the use of marijuana smell alone as a basis for a vehicle search. In Texas and many southeastern states, the odor of marijuana still provides probable cause for a full vehicle search under current case law. Know your state's specific standard, because what protects you in one state can work against you in another. These are educational notes, not legal advice for your specific situation. Always consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction before making any decisions about how these rules apply to your circumstances. Here is the complete protocol one final time, because this information only protects you if you can access it in the moment. Pull over safely. Turn on your dome light. Hands on the steering wheel. Window down 2 to 4 inches. Before you open that door, phrase 1. Officer, are you ordering me to exit the vehicle? And if so, what is the lawful basis for that order? Phrase 2. I am invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I do not consent to any searches of my person, my vehicle, or my belongings. I am requesting to speak with an attorney before answering any questions. Phrase 3. I am complying with your order under protest, and my hands will remain visible at all times. Step out. Close the door. For every question after that, I have invoked my right to remain silent. When the stop appears complete, phrase 4. Has the purpose of this stop been completed? Am I free to go? 4 phrases, 4 layers of constitutional protection, all documented on the officer's own body camera before your foot ever touches the pavement. The law has always given you these rights. The problem has never been the law. The problem has been that nobody taught you the language to exercise them. You have that language now. The Constitution does not protect you automatically. It protects you when you invoke it. That is not a flaw in the system. That is how the system was designed to work, but only when citizens understand what the system actually requires of them. The Supreme Court rulings we covered today are not obscure legal technicalities. They are the documented framework that governs what happens to your rights at 50,000 traffic stops every single day in this country. Most drivers will never know these cases exist. Most drivers will continue to comply silently, answer questions they had every right to decline, and hand over constitutional protections they never realized they were surrendering. That is not their fault. Nobody taught them the language. The mainstream media does not cover these rulings in a way that gives you anything you can actually use. That is why AmeriBrief exists. That is why you are here. And that is why we have to keep building this together. The people watching right now are the ones who will be ready the next time those lights come on in their mirror. And they will come on. Stay informed, stay protected, stay free. I'm Rebecca Turner. This is AmeriBrief.
Subscribe to AmeriBrief and ring that notification bell, because your constitutional rights at traffic stops are only one of the legal areas where knowing the right words makes the difference between walking away protected and walking away wondering what just happened.
Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 4 phrases surprised you most? And which one do you think most Americans would never think to say in the moment? I read every comment. Share this video with someone you know who drives every day and has never thought about what they are actually giving away the moment they open that door without saying a word. Because this video could change what happens to them the next time those lights come on. Stay informed, stay protected, stay free. I'm Rebecca Turner. This is AmeriBrief. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Laws governing traffic stops vary significantly by state and are subject to frequent change. Always consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction before making any decisions about how these rules apply to your specific situation.